All right, so today's lesson is solving absolute value equations. So we have talked about absolute value a little bit already. So let's go ahead and get started here. Absolute value, remember that is the, oh, sorry, I don't have a pen here. That is the distance from 0 on a number line. Okay, so what does that mean? That means I can never have a negative absolute value because it's a distance. Distance can't be negative. So I want you to look at 3 ways that we can express the absolute value. So I'm not really doing words, but I want to do x plus 3 equals 5. Okay, so it can be written as an equation, and I could write it in words. The symbols, absolute value of A. What's the absolute value of A? It's A. What's the absolute value of a negative A? It's A. What's the absolute value negative of an A? Okay, so then the negative is on the outside, so that stays negative in the absolute value of A. So that doesn't mean that the absolute value of A is negative A. It's because I have this negative on the outside. So absolute value of a negative 4 equals 4. All right, so let's look at an actual problem. So this is an expression, so we're evaluating an expression. Remember, if we're evaluating an expression, that means you're actually going to have an answer. So I'm going to have 2.7 plus absolute value of 6 minus 2 times 4. Absolute value, because I just plugged in 4 for x. So now I get 2.7 plus absolute value of 6 minus 8, absolute value. Now I get 2.7 plus absolute value of negative 2. Absolute value of negative 2 is just 2. So now my answer is 4.7. So when you're evaluating, you will just have an answer. Okay? So on the second one, I'm plugging in negative 2. So absolute value of 4 times negative 2 plus 3, absolute value minus 3.5. Okay, I want you to go ahead and work that, and I'll come back. All right, so hopefully you see that your answer is 1.5 and that you have worked the exact same way I have, and you've done your steps. All right, so now we have absolute value equations. So what I need you to remember is when we're doing absolute value equations, you always have 2 equations. So I always have 2 equations. So let's look at this. The absolute value is by itself. So the first thing you're going to look to see if absolute value by itself. It is. So then I'm going to make my 2 equations. So my first one, y plus 3 equals 8. My second one, y plus 3 equals a negative 8. Now, some of you have had teachers in the past who have actually put a parenthesis here and a negative out front. You can do it that way. I just feel like you guys make more mistakes that way. So I choose not to do it. These are the same thing if you would solve them. All right, so I'm going to subtract 3. I get y equals 5. I'm going to subtract 3. And I get y equals a negative 11. So those are my 2 answers. So what I need to do is I need to check those. So you're going to check solutions. you do not have to show me this. You do not have to show that you've checked them. So you can just talk through it. I put 5 in. 5 plus 3 is 8. Absolute value of 8 is 8. 8 equals 8. That's true. Plug in a negative 11. Negative 11 plus 3 is negative 8. Absolute value 8. 8 equals 8. True. So my solutions are, and they're in those silly little brackets, 5 and negative 11. I don't care what order they're in here, but that's your answer. So then let's try this one. Some of you hate when it's written like this, so then just rewrite it. X plus 12 equals 9. So now I have x plus 12 equals 9. X plus 12 equals a negative 9. I subtract 12 from both sides. I get x equals negative 3. I subtract 12 from both sides. I get x equals a negative 21. So I plug that back in. Negative 3 plus 12 is 9. Absolute value of 9 is 9. So yes, that works. Negative 21. Plug negative 21 in. I get 9, negative 9, absolute value 9, 9. It works. So then my solution set is negative 3 and negative 21. And that's my answer. Okay? All right, so let's go down to if it has no solution. So let's think about, we talked about this the other day actually, when it would have no solution. So remember, it's going to have no solution if the absolute value equals a negative number. So remember, my absolute value cannot equal a negative number. Okay? So I solve for this one. I have to get the absolute value by itself, so I subtract 5. I get absolute value of 6 minus 4j equals negative 5. Can an absolute value equals a negative 5? No, so that's no solution. And then that's all you do. That's your answer. Okay, on the next one, this one, you're like, oh yeah, we can work that one. So if I divide by a negative 2, though, that cancels, but now I have absolute value of 3a equals negative 3. Can an absolute value equal a negative number? No, so no solution. So just be careful on those, that if you're adding or subtracting a number that's causing it, multiplying, dividing a number, causing it to be negative once it gets by itself. We're not doing this, so just ignore that. Extraneous solution, we already talked about that. That's just when it doesn't work. So we're going to check those here in a minute. All right, so next problem. These look a little trickier and they are a little more work. So the two equations. My first equation is going to be 8 plus r equals 2r minus 3. That's my first equation. Let's just work, well, let's see here. My second equation is going to be 8 plus r equals the negative of 2r minus 3. So you're still setting that equal part, your answer part, to a negative. So now let's work through these problems. So I'm going to get r to the left-hand side, so I'm going to subtract 2r. I get 8 minus r equals negative 3. I'm going to subtract 8. Those cancel. I get negative r equals negative 11. I'm going to divide by a negative 1. I get r equals 11. Okay? Now I'm going to work the second one the same kind of way. And I'm first going to distribute that negative. So I get negative 2r plus 3. I'm going to add 2r to both sides. I get 8 plus 3r equals 3. I'm going to subtract 8. I get 3r equals negative 5. I'm going to divide by a positive 3. I get r equals negative 5/3. Okay, so I'm going to put right here, remember to check answers. Okay, so this one's a little harder to check. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in 11 up here. 11, so I'm just going to write it down here. Here's my check. I'm going to have 11 inside the absolute value, which is 19. So I'm going to get absolute value of 19 on that side. Equals, I plug in 11, I get 22 minus 3, which is 19. So that one works. So this one works. Now I'm going to check this one. This one's a little trickier. So you're plugging it in to the original problem. So I have absolute value of 8 minus 5/3 equals 2 times negative 5/3 minus 3. So here, if I solve this one, and you guys can do it in your calculators, I get 19/3. Here, I get negative 19/3. So that does not work. So this one doesn't work. So your only answer is 11. All right. I'm going to pause it, and I want you guys to work the second one, and we'll come back and check answers. All right, so this one was a booger to check, okay? It was a little tricky to check, so you'll want to use your calculator on that to make sure you did everything right. Remember, I want everything no decimals, so if you would get a decimal, I need you to hit Math, Enter, so that you'll come back out with a fraction, okay? And that is it. I'm not sure why I have it again. So that's all the notes I have. See you later.